ranking all starting catchers from 30 to 1. These rankings are almost entirely going to be backed up with statistical evidence and a little bit of my own intuition sprinkled in here and there. 92% of you watching this are not subscribed, so if you enjoy these rankings, I would appreciate it, and you won't miss any of the future rankings here coming in the month of February. With that being said, let's get into it with number 30. Starting us off is Corey Lee of the Chicago White Sox. Not surprising to see the White Sox pop up this early in the video. Lee in 2024 though was pretty poor. A WRC plus of only 64, a walk rate of only 4.3, and a strikeout rate of 31. Those don't give me much confidence in him as a hitter going into 2025. He's also one of the worst defensive catchers on this list as he posted a -7 fielding run value, mostly because of his 7th percentile framing. I'm going to be referencing fielding run value a lot, so if you don't know what it is, it combines framing, blocking, and throwing out runners to give a number that represents the player's value defensively. He does have a great pop time at 1.85 seconds, which is in the 97th percentile, and that allows him to throw out a lot of runners. But framing is king at the catcher position in 2025, and that's probably a good thing to keep in mind for the rest of this ranking. At number 29, representing the Washington Nationals, is Keibert Ruiz, a former top prospect largely because of his great hit tool. That hit tool is still around today. He has a 98th percentile strikeout rate at 11.1% and a 99th percentile whiff rate. So he makes a lot of contact, but not a lot of good contact. His expected WOBA was just 279, which is in the 9th percentile. That pretty much means his exit velocities and launch angles just aren't getting it done, even though he's putting the ball in play a lot. Defensively, Ruiz has been a disaster throughout his major league career, although he improved from -23 fielding run value in 2023 to just -5 in 2024. I was low on him last year, and I'm even lower on him this year. At number 28 is Luis Campusano of the San Diego Padres. Campusano is tied for the worst defensive catcher on this list in 2024 with a fielding run value of -13. As a catcher, this is going to make it very hard to be valuable to a team. Unfortunately, the offense is not great for Campusano either, as he posted just an 83 WRC plus last season. The expected numbers aren't great, and very similarly to Ruiz, he puts the ball in play a lot, just not hard enough. Number 27 is Miami Marlins catcher Nick Fortes. Fortes is basically a hole in the lineup, with back-to-back seasons having a WRC plus in the 50s. He makes up for it a little defensively though, as he posted a 3 fielding run value in 2024 and a 5 in 2023, in the 69th and 80th percentile respectively. Unlike the 3 catchers I ranked behind him, he has something of value that he can provide to a team. I can't really put him any higher than this though, as the offense really holds him back. At number 26 is Jacob Stallings. He had a good year production-wise with a 114 WRC+, but that's not going to sustain itself for 2025. His actual WOBA was much higher than his expected WOBA, meaning some luck was probably involved. Defensively, he was also a negative. He's 35 years old, so most likely he's only going to regress from here anyway. Coming in at number 25 is Connor Wong for the Boston Red Sox. If you're a Red Sox fan, you might be thinking he belongs a little higher on this list. Last season, though, he was tied with Campusano for the least valuable catcher defensively with an FRV of -13. He had a much better offensive production, though, with a WRC plus of 110. So what gives? Well, the underlying numbers are pretty scary. A 16th percentile expected WOBA, 11th percentile exit velocity, 20th percentile hard hit rate, a 16th percentile walk rate, and a 38th percentile strikeout rate. You can see that his actual WOBA was much higher than his expected WOBA. This is probably because he plays in a very hitter-friendly park, as well as some luck. And when you add that to the worst defensive catcher in the league last season, he's number 25 for me. Number 24 is Danny Jansen for the Rays. Last season, he had a 100th percentile blocks above average, which is impressive, but in the grand scheme of things, not that valuable. His walk rate last year was great at 12.3%. In 2023, though, it was 7.6%. A little bit confusing there, but what is for sure is that he doesn't make great contact. Very low bat speed, exit velocity, and hard hit rates. We've seen him be a productive offensive player in the past, but I wouldn't count on it for 2025. Number 23 is Miguel Amaya from the Chicago Cubs. Much like every other catcher on here so far, he was below average defensively last season, although 98th percentile in blocking. Framing and throwing out runners were both in the 16th percentile, and unfortunately, those are a lot more important. Offensively, he's not going to be much of a difference maker with an 83 WRC plus last season. The underlying numbers do show that he has some potential there though, with an expected WOBA of 300, and he's only 25, so some development would definitely not be surprising. At number 22 is Texas Rangers catcher Jonah Heim. Wow, a very surprisingly bad year for Heim in 2024. I would understand it a lot better if he just had a down year offensively, but his fielding run value went down to -5 from +12 in 2023. He went from being in the 97th percentile in framing to being below average, something you don't really expect to happen, especially for someone who's only 29 years old. That definitely concerns me, as well as the offensive decline. Lower exit velocities, lower walk rate, and his ground ball rate increased by 5.5%. Obviously, I'm still taking 2023 into account, so he's not that low, but he's definitely not going in the right direction. At number 21 is Ryan Jeffers for the Minnesota Twins. He was in the 7th percentile in fielding run value last season, which is not good. Offensively, we saw a lot of regression from his 2023 season, which was expected. With the poor defense he plays, the offense has to be well above average for him to be valuable. We saw his exit velocity fall from above average in 2023 to the 13th percentile last season, which really caps the ceiling for his offense. At number 20, we have Joey Bart for the Pittsburgh Pirates. This season is very similar to what we saw from Jeffers in 2023. A small sample, good offensively with a 121 WRC plus and a 333 expected WOBA, but it's just a small sample. Also defensively, Bart doesn't grade out too well, as he recorded a -5 fielding run value in just 80 games. Now, this breakout isn't coming out of nowhere, as Bart was the number 2 overall pick in 2018. I just want to see a full season of Bart in this form until we move him up with the established offensive catchers in the league. For now, he and Jeffers are in a pretty similar boat. Shea Langoliers of the Athletics comes in at number 19. Much like the last two catchers, he's above average offensively, but defensively, he leaves a lot to be desired. Framing-wise, he's one of the worst catchers in the league with 12th percentile framing runs, and he's the worst blocker in the league by far. He had -26 blocks above average, and the next closest to him was -19, Francisco Alvarez, who we'll talk about soon. The offense just isn't good enough to make up for this lack of defense at a defensive-oriented position, but it is something. He had an 87th percentile barrel rate last season, which means he hits the ball hard and at a good launch angle consistently. There's definitely potential for him on the offensive side to improve, but for now, he's 19. At number 18 is Bo Naylor from the Cleveland Guardians. Naylor has been great defensively since he's been called up, as he's in the 89th percentile for framing and recorded 8 fielding run value last season, which is in the 87th percentile. Now might be a good time to point out the main difference between B-WAR and F-WAR when it comes to catchers. As you can see, Naylor's B-WAR is very low, and that's because B-WAR doesn't take into account framing, which for me makes it pretty useless when evaluating a catcher, since framing has been found to be very valuable. Naylor's F-WAR is higher at 1.6, which explains the framing difference. Offensively, he is yet to develop, but there is definitely something in him. He was a top prospect for a reason, and that reason was his power. He did have a barrel rate in the 52nd percentile, but he didn't make contact frequently enough to take advantage of it, with a strikeout rate north of 30. The defense is going to play, and if he could just be an average hitter, he will have a spot in the big leagues for a while. At number 17 is Tyler Stevenson for the Cincinnati Reds. Coming off a terrible year in 2023, Stevenson bounced back in 2024, posting a WRC plus at 112 in 138 games. Defensively, he was a little below average, but was a lot better numbers-wise than in 2023. He has an above-average walk rate, hard hit rate, exit velocity, so the offense I don't think will be much of a problem moving forward. I'm more worried that his defense might fall back to what it was in 2023. At number 16 is Logan O'Hoppe of the Los Angeles Angels. O'Hoppe strikes out a lot and doesn't walk, but makes up for it by making good contact. His sweet spot percentage was in the 100th percentile, which basically measures how good a player's launch angle is. He also hits the ball pretty hard, with an average exit velocity of 90.4 miles per hour in the 70th percentile. Defensively, he's not good, but also not bad. His framing was slightly below average last year, but he threw out runners at an average rate. Overall, he had a fielding run value of -2, which is just below the average of 0. And he's only 24 years old, so still plenty of time to get better in the swing decision department. At number 15 is Francisco Alvarez for the New York Mets. Alvarez spent some time on the injured list last season, and he had a pretty disappointing season all told, considering the expectations most people had for him. Defensively, he's been a pretty good framer, but what we want out of Alvarez is the offense. The bat speed last year was pretty good at 73.6 miles per hour, the fastest swing of any catcher I've mentioned so far, so he has the power in him. He just needs to make more consistent contact, which is something that a lot of young hitters have in common. At number 14 is Sean Murphy for the Atlanta Braves. We only saw Murphy play 108 games in 2023 and only 72 in 2024, so first of all, he needs to just stay on the field. Last year, though, the production dropped significantly. He only had a WRC plus of 78, which is well below what we saw from him in previous years. Defensively, he was still above average with a fielding run value of 3. I think it might be best to hope that the lack of production was due to him getting injured literally in the first game of the season, but I had to knock him down a few spots to 14. At number 13 is Jake Rogers for the Detroit Tigers. Rogers is by far the best defensive catcher we've talked about so far, as he posted a 12 fielding run value in just 102 games last season. He's a great framer, something that you'll see a lot of these top catchers have in common. Offensively, it was a down year for him with a WRC plus of only 71, but he still managed to record 2.2 FWAR, which can just show you how valuable framing is at the catcher position. And you also might notice that the BWAR is much lower for the reasons I explained before. He massively underperformed his expected numbers though. As you can see, his actual WOBA was 33 points lower than his expected, meaning he was probably getting at least a little unlucky. I think his offense will improve going into 2025. At number 12 is Salvador Perez from the Kansas City Royals. I'm not actually sure how many games Salvi will catch in 2025, especially with Freddie Fermin, a much better defensive catcher on the team. Perez was actually an average framer last year, which gave him some good defensive value. Offensively though, he was very good. A 92nd percentile expected WOBA and a 95th percentile expected slugging means that he was hitting the ball hard and hard often. Obviously, the age is getting up there and he's going to be 34 years old, and catchers typically don't age well. At number 11 is JT Realmuto for the Philadelphia Phillies. Last year, Realmuto was worth 2 FWAR over 99 games, which is solid, but there are just a lot of good catchers in the league right now. Offensively, he's still a little above average, but defensively, he's far from where he was a few years ago, as he's now, at best, a league average defender. I just don't see him as a top 10 catcher, given the talent in the league right now. Coming in at number 10 is the Toronto Blue Jays starting catcher, Alejandro Kirk. Now, some of you may think this is a little high, especially if you're the one to focus on offensive production. But Kirk has an argument to be the second best defensive catcher on this list, as last season he was tied for second in fielding run value. He was in the 93rd percentile in framing and 95th in throwing out runners. Even though he's a below average hitter, he posted a 2.8 FWAR last season in only 103 games. It's not like he's even awful on offense. He makes a lot of contact with a strikeout rate of just 13.2%. At number 9 is Ivan Herrera for the St. Louis Cardinals. This is one of my favorite young catchers in the league right now. Since he's been called up, he's done nothing but rake, with a 366 expected WOBA and a 93rd percentile expected batting average last year. Last season, he had a WRC plus of 127, the second highest of any catcher on this ranking. Defensively, he comes in just below league average, which is fine considering how good he's been offensively. The only downside is the sample size, only 72 games last season, so we'll see how he does over a larger sample in 2025. At number 8 is Yainer Diaz, representing the Houston Astros. He has a similar profile to Herrera, a young catcher that is primarily known for his offense. Defensively, Diaz struggled a lot last year in the 4th percentile for framing, which is unfortunate because he was really good on offense. His biggest hole offensively is his inability to walk. His walk rate of 3.9% in 2024 was in the 5th percentile, and his chase rate was in the 2nd percentile, so discipline is something he definitely needs to improve on. Other than that though, he's a pretty complete offensive player. At number 7 is Will Smith for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Smith's coming off his worst full season of his career with just 2.7 FWAR and a career-low 111 WRC+. Not to mention, he was also in the 1st percentile for framing. That is not good. Obviously, he has the track record and the underlying numbers still look good. A 66th percentile walk rate, a 67th percentile K rate, a 74th percentile barrel rate. These are all pretty good for a catcher. I think he'll bounce back at least a little bit in 2025, so I'm putting him at number 7. Coming in at number 6 is Gabriel Moreno of the Arizona Diamondbacks. This is the first really well-rounded catcher that we're going to talk about. Offense, above average. Walk rate is amazing at 11.7%. Strikeout rate amazing at 14.8%. Also, he hits for good power with an exit velocity on average of 90 miles per hour in the 67th percentile. Defensively, he was above average in framing and throwing out runners, making him a very good all-around catcher, and he's only 24 years old. At number 5 is Austin Wells for the New York Yankees. I know some of you may be saying, oh, he was so bad in the playoffs though. I don't care about the 20-game sample size or whatever it was. Over the 115 games in the regular season, he was one of the top framers in the league with 12 framing runs in the 96th percentile. Overall, he has a fielding run value of 14 in the 96th percentile as well. He was an above-average hitter with a 105 WRC+, and his expected numbers said he was even supposed to be better if things went how they were expected to. 3.4 fWAR in 115 games in his rookie season makes him a top 5 catcher to me, statistically. At number 4 is Adley Rutschman for the Baltimore Orioles. Adley was pretty disappointing last year, as many of you probably know, a 104 WRC+, and pretty much neutral on the defensive side. We saw him take significantly less walks and strike out more, not the best development that you want to see. The more concerning thing was the lack of defense, as that was one of the qualities that got many people excited for Adley. Hopefully this year was just a down year and he'll get back to his 2023 numbers sooner than later, and for that reason, I still have him at number 4. At number 3 is Patrick Bailey of the San Francisco Giants. If you watched my channel before or followed my TikTok, you would know that this guy was going to be ranked very high. This is probably the best defensive start to a catcher's career that we've ever seen. 22 fielding run value last season was in the 100th percentile. 2023, he was also in the 100th percentile. He has 33 framing runs over his first 2 years in the majors, which is already good for 9th all time, since 2015 when they started tracking it. His defense is so good, he was worth 4.3 fWAR despite having a WRC plus of 81, well below average. His expected numbers are much better when you look at the offensive side, and he's probably being hurt by being a left-handed hitter in Oracle Park. His floor is just so incredibly high that I can't put him anywhere but number 3. At number 2, the best offensive catcher in the league is William Contreras of the Milwaukee Brewers. With his brother heading to first base, William now certainly holds the title as the best offensive catcher with a 132 WRC plus last season and a 358 expected WOBA. Defensively, he took a step back last year to around league average, which is definitely disappointing because if you combine his 2023 defense with his 2024 offense, you would have one insane catcher. He walks a lot, gets on base at a high clip, and hits the ball hard with a 94th percentile exit velo in 2024. He's only not number 1 because Cal Raleigh exists. Now, you can interchange these guys if you really want to, but Raleigh's defense for me is the tiebreaker. He was tied with Alejandro Kirk with 14 fielding run value for second behind Patrick Bailey last season. His OPS has been consistently in the mid-700s over the past 3 seasons, and I just don't see any way that he's not a top 3 catcher in the league in 2025. His barrel rate in the 96th percentile to go along with an 85th percentile walk rate is a pretty good combination for a catcher of his caliber on defense. For that reason, he is my number 1 catcher for the 2025 season. Let me know what you would change if you'd have a player be higher, a player be lower. Tell me why. I won't be mad at you as long as you subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.